We're on an alien battlefield where I need to lay low as much as possible. Time to switch out this dull gold for bright and shiny silver. Hello everyone and welcome to the Recap Review. Today we're taking a look at set number 7135, Takanuva. The set contains approximately 21 pieces, was released in the winter of 2010, and during time of release was approximately $8. Alright, so here we have it, the last white Bionicle set of 2000, of the entire series of Bionicle Generation 1. Before we get into the review, let me go ahead and get my disclaimer out of the way. Just because there are pros and cons in this video does not necessarily mean they're my personal opinion. I do my best to make these videos as objective as possible, and as such, any and all comments should be taken as either community opinions or as objective facts about the set I can represent here on camera. So please, unless I explicitly say so, do not assume anything here are my personal opinions. Okay? Awesome. Let's go ahead and get into the review. So here we have Takanuva, the Toa of Light. Story-wise, Takanuva, somewhere along the way, got two swords instead of the one staff, or the power staff, or the power lance that he had, rather. And on the battlefield of Bar Magna, he was like, well, I'm a really important person, and I've got gold armor, and I'm probably one of the strongest Toa here, because we're fighting Rakshi, and Rakshi are really weak to light, so I should probably lay low. And so he made his color scheme white, silver, and gray. So that's the story explanation. Of course, we know he's not gold because the golden armor promotion applied to Tahu, not Takanuva. Which, personally speaking, I think it should have rather been Takanuva who wore the golden armor instead of Tahu. Personal opinion, though, let's go ahead and get on with the review. So, Takanuva, I'm going to go ahead and show you one of the sets that he originally looked like. You see, Takanuva is from a lineage line of sets, where he has multiple iterations of that one character. Normally, I would show you guys the last set that Takanuva was represented with. However, since Takanuva is part of the Stars line, he's not supposed to mimic the last set he released. He's supposed to mimic a very specific set. Now, there are two trains of thought as far as who Takanuva is supposed to represent here. The first one is obvious. The first release of Takanuva in 2003. You can probably guess why. He's got the same mask, he's got Nuva shoulder pieces, and he has a staff instead of a lance. Well, the other train of thought is that he's actually a representation for 2008, because of his color scheme, which is darker. There is white, but there's also gray and silver, which Takanuva from 2003 did not have. Additionally, if it were Takanuva from 2003, that means we would have two sets from that year, as opposed to having a set from 2003 being the Rakshi, and then Takanuva representing 2008, which is a fairly pivotal point in Bionicle's story. I am not going to show you Takanuva from 08, because the prevailing thought is that it's Takanuva from 2003. So that is what I'm going to show you. So here is Takanuva from 2010, and this is Takanuva from 2003. So we can see here the comparison is not all that far off. As I mentioned earlier, some things are rather consistent. The Nuva shoulder pieces being right there, the same mask, and we also have a staff with a single blade, like so. The color scheme is also rather similar, being primarily white. However, the difference here, primarily, aside from the build and the pieces used, would in fact be the golden armor, and the fact he has two of these staff pieces, additionally his eye color. So we can see here that this is actually a really good adaptation. The leg pieces on Takanuva from 2003, they were the bulkier, wider ones from the Toa Nuva wave. Here we can see they are also the bulkier, wider ones. And that looks rather consistent. Again, we do have the shoulder pieces, and it is the same mask. However, the majority of differences are rather straightforward because they're two different building systems. Takanuva from 2010, he's in a Gory build or an Avtorn build, whichever you prefer, and Takanuva from 2003 is the standard Toa build from that time. He also has larger feet, probably, I want to say longer arms. He's also a little bit taller. Additionally, he has a function, the one gear in the back, while Takanuva from 2010 doesn't have any functions, just the mobility. Additionally, they have very similar points of articulation. 2 in the legs, 2 in the arms, if you do not count the function. And, well, that's about it. Takanuva from 2010 has the additional bonus of head articulation, while this Takanuva does not. So, that about sums it up. I'm going to go ahead and put that to the side, and then we're going to go ahead and get into this set. So let's go ahead and look over the new and recolored pieces. First of all, the recolors, and I'm actually not confident that these are recolors. They're new to Bionicle, sure, but I'm fairly certain that they came in prior to Bionicle as a whole. So they may have been in white with, maybe not Bionicle as a whole, but they came in hockey sets, and I'm fairly certain they came in white. However, I can't be sure about that, so at the very least they are new recolors to the Bionicle theme. Additionally, the mask is a recolor. Now, some of you may be thinking, well, no, that came out in Makuta from 2003 as well. However, yes and no. While it's still a shade of silver, this is a pearl silver, because there isn't only pearl gold. It's a brighter silver, and definitely a lot, it's kind of like the Voyatoran's weapons, how they were a much softer looking, brighter shade of silver. This is the same way, so it does count as a recolor. As far as new pieces are concerned, well, actually no, I think recolor-wise I'm fairly certain these leg pieces and the arm pieces are new as well. However, I'm not 100% certain. Well, 100% confident. I'm sure of it, but I'm not confident that it's absolutely the case. So we'll throw that in as a possibility. Now, as far as new pieces are concerned, we actually only have 2. First of all, the torso armor piece, and this time we have that in white. Additionally, we have it in pearl gold. Now, this is part of the golden armor. This can either be Tahu's arm piece or his chest piece, whichever you prefer. Additionally, we have the new foot piece, also in white on this set. So there is that. And those are new pieces. So let's go ahead and get into Takanuva as a set. Right out the gate, people are not very happy because it's a standard Agori or Avtorn build. So the articulation is rather limited. 2 in the legs, 2 in the arms, and 1 in the head. So not a lot of people like that for those reasons. Additionally, the joints are incredibly brittle. So mocking with those pieces, you're only going to get a few uses out of it. The new pieces, however, are not joint-based. They're axle-based, so you have a lot more usage to get out of them. Additionally, because it's Takanuva, people are not happy with the fact that he's not white and gold, and that he has gray to begin with. While most people are aware it's supposed to be a contrasting color, it's still a little bit disappointing for most to see Takanuva not in his natural color scheme for the second year that he's been, the third time he's been released, and second in a row. Not year in a row, but set release character in a row, if that makes any sense. Finally, he has 2 weapons. Now, people do like that because, well, it gives him an additional weapon to fight Rakshi, which do have staves. However, he also never had 2 staff or bladed weapons. Of course, the mask is also another point of contention, because while it is a new recolor, it's silver, as opposed to either white and, of course, gold. Because it's silver, it is the only one of 3 silver pieces on Takanuva, and he's never had a bright silver mask. So people are a little unsure as to why it wasn't either white or dark gray, because it does kind of stick out on him, being the only silver piece that contributes to his armor and not his weapons, which is really unusual for the stars. Of course, people do like the fact that his color scheme is, well, white, primarily, and they do enjoy the fact that Takanuva is back. Some people would have preferred it being Kopaka or a character that does control ice. However, most agree it's a fine choice because Takanuva is a relatively important character in the story. So, that's pretty much everything regarding Takanuva. Again, the articulation is rather limited. You can't do a whole lot with it. Of course, if you want to go ahead and make Takanuva, his original color scheme, it's a little bit difficult to do. Because while these are all in pearl gold, these 3 pieces here, his mask is and isn't. It is because there is a prototype of Voki in pearl gold, and there are people in the community that have one. It isn't because it was never mass-produced, and it is incredibly hard to get a hold of. Additionally, the torso does not come out in white, so you're going to have to stick with the gray. But that's really Takanuva. What do you guys think? Do you like Takanuva? Do you think it should have been a different white character? Feel free to let me know either in the comments below or on the TTV message boards at board.ttvchannel.com. Thank you all very much for watching, and join me next time when I look over the first of the bad guys, the Skrull. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you all then.